shares. As you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and all last week we've heard from student athletes and coaches who've shared why mental health is important and what they do to cope with their mental health and how they maintain that. And so today I'm really excited to have our president, Dr. Linda Livingstone, here to continue the conversation about mental health. So thank you, Dr. Livingstone, for being with us today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, Dr. Marsh-Bell. I'm thrilled that you asked, and I think this is a wonderful service that you're providing to the community. So thank you for including me.
Absolutely. So like I said, our student athletes and coaches have kind of shared about why mental health is important. And I know during your time here, you have really supported our mental health services all over campus, the counseling center in the Bark, and of course, athletics, mental health. And so I just want to know, why has that been important for you to support these areas on campus?
Well, they are so critically important to what we do to support our students and our student athletes across campus. And, I think at a very high level, in our mission, we talk about having a caring community. And so obviously part of being a caring community is caring about the kind of holistic well-being of our students. And certainly then mental health is a part of that, and critically important. If you're not mentally healthy, then being physically healthy or emotionally healthy, it's difficult without really strong mental health in there. And then I would say that I certainly have had family members that have struggled with some mental health issues. And so you see that, and you see the impact that it has on the individuals and their families and their communities, and you realize how important it is to support them, to help ensure that they get the support and help that they need to be healthy and fully functioning in the environment that they're in. So anything we can do on our campus to help support those efforts, we certainly want to do, and we want to make them available to students. And then we want students to know that it's safe to take advantage of those services that are provided.
Yeah, I think that's so important, because a lot of times people think that mental illness is such a rare thing. And because 1 in 5 adults experience a mental illness in their lifetime. And our college students are kind of at that age, that 18 to 24, where if you're going to experience a mental illness, you kind of have your first episode during that time. So a lot of them think that it's this distant thing that is so rare to people. And actually, it's really common.
Well, it absolutely is. And I think a lot of people maybe don't, because it's sort of been kind of a hidden issue for many, many years, and we're really trying to help people feel more comfortable talking about it and seeking help when they need it, that I think sometimes people just are kind of worried about admitting that they have concerns or think they might have mental health issues that need to be addressed. And so I think the more we understand that this is a very common part of many people's life experience, and that they're not alone in some of the struggles, and that there's people there that can help them, the better off that we are. And we certainly know it's a significant issue on our college campuses as students are away from home for the first time and having to make some of their own decisions and have more responsibility. And we've certainly seen colleges and universities around the country really significantly increase the amount of support they provide, because it is such an important time for young people, and there are a lot of mental health issues that they deal with.
Yeah, so you were a student athlete, so you know about trying to balance all the parts that come with being a student, right? Being an athlete, being a student, maybe living in a roommate situation for the first time, being away from home, having to balance the travel schedule and trying to get work done. What did you do to balance all those things? Or maybe even, I know your daughter was a student athlete.
Right.
What did you see her do to balance all of that comes with being a student athlete? Because sometimes that's where it starts, kind of this balancing game that our athletes are trying to play.
Yeah, I know they can feel overwhelmed, and then many of them are kind of in the spotlight too. They can be public figures, and their performance is public.
Yeah.
People see it and watch it, and frankly, they sometimes get criticized for it in ways that are public that they really have no control over. So it is a really different environment for them. And I think back to my time in college. I think about the experiences Shelby had when she was playing volleyball at Rice, and I think certainly I was fortunate to have wonderful roommates that were great kind of partners. One of my roommates played on the basketball team. And so, we kind of went through it together, and we could be a resource and support for one another. And then frankly, we were very involved in Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so I think having a faith community, whether it's your local church, something like FCA or Athletes in Action, where you have a faith community where everybody can really come together and support and encourage one another is critical. I know that was really important to Shelby when she was at Rice. And she and I both had major ACL injuries when we were in college, kind of interestingly enough. And, you know, those are really difficult times to go through. She ended up redshirting a year. I didn't actually redshirt. And that was a challenging year for her, but she had, you know, wonderful support from, you know, her training staff, from her coaches, from the FCA staff, from her teammates that really helped her get through what was a difficult time. So having those support networks around you, whether they're formal or informal, and having access to counseling services is really critically important. And so I think athletes in particular, because of the high profile nature of what they do, the many different pressures on them, you know, need to be willing to reach out and seek that support from others when they're feeling stressed or feeling overwhelmed, because there are tons of resources available to help them work through and manage some of those stresses.
Yeah. You brought up one of the times in which our athletes experience mental illness maybe at a little higher rate is when they're injured.
Yeah.
A lot of their identity is being an athlete. You know, when you ask athlete, tell me something about yourself, sometimes one of the first things they say is like what sport they play and how they've been playing it. And so feeling like they're disconnected from that part of their identity, we've seen that symptoms of anxiety and depression tend to increase at times. So having the support system that you're talking about is so important. I think it's kind of funny, but when I see student athletes who are injured, they often feel like they're the only person. And I'm like, you know, there's a lot of other injuries.
A lot of them have gone through.
You know, not only you can connect with them, they really know what you're going through because they're going through it as well.
Absolutely. I also think it's really one of the special things about being at a Christian university, because we can really have conversations about, you know, our identity is in Christ. It's not in being a student or being an athlete, but it's much bigger than that and more significant than that. And, you know, whether you ever play sports again or not, that doesn't dictate your value and your worth in the eyes of God. And so I think it does give us some tools and some opportunities to have really meaningful conversations with young people that are going through struggles that can actually kind of help put it in perspective. And then frankly, make them better when they're back on the court or on the field, where in some ways there's less pressure and they can just enjoy using the gifts God has given them to perform at the level they can perform.
Absolutely. So our student athletes are one side, but we've had some coaches on and some staff to talk about how they manage their stress level. So you are the president of Baylor University, and we're in the middle of a global pandemic. So if there's anyone that maybe has a little heightened level of stress or things happening right now in their life, I imagine you would be maybe one of those people.
You could probably say that, yes.
So how do you manage your stress and unwind and relax from your day-to-day work?
Yeah. Well, you actually see the Brazos River in the background of my screen here. And we actually like to get outside and do things. We've got kayaks, so we like to get out on the river as a family and just really get away. You know, I spend almost all of every day on Zoom calls or Teams calls or something. And, you know, at first you thought, well, that's not that big of a deal, but I actually find it more stressful than when I was in sort of meetings and in and out of physical meetings. And so being able to just get away and do something completely different than kind of the routine of a work day, I've found to be really helpful. And certainly doing physical activity, whether that's something like kayaking or working out. And you know, we do fun stuff like play around the world ping pong as a family. So it's exercise and fun at the same time. It's been really important. And then I have a wonderful family. I'm blessed with a wonderful husband and daughter, and we enjoy being together. And so, you know, doing things with them that have nothing to do with work has been really helpful during this time. And the other thing, you know, is I think, you know, getting sleep is really critically important. Young people sometimes don't get enough sleep. And I know we work really hard to get them to do it, but to me, that's really important. I know when I get tired, the stress seems a lot worse, and I feel sort of less in control of what I'm dealing with. So, all the things we tell people, physical activity, eating right, getting enough sleep, all of those things help tremendously. And I think even more when you're dealing with a really stressful time. And then frankly, good time with family and friends. And we have to be careful how we do that now, where you're just really doing something completely different than the things that create stress in your life is important.
Yeah, I read somewhere that the Zoom meetings make you miss kind of the rush between actual meetings. Sometimes when we were on campus, there was like maybe 10 or 15 minutes and we're rushing to get to another meeting, but you kind of miss that now, the exercise part of it,
Right.
the people in the halls, maybe even the trying to find a parking space part. I won't complain about that as much when we get back to campus, but that was an important part of kind of managing our day-to-day. I'm glad you shared how you're doing that now. So we kind of mentioned this before, talking a little bit about the stigma and the fact that people don't always talk about mental health. We've seen a lot of athletes kind of come forward and talk about their struggles with mental health and what they're doing to take care of themselves at this kind of higher level. What do you think we could do here at Baylor to maybe help decrease the stigma and really open up the conversation about mental health a little bit more?
Well, I think it's really important, particularly given what we talked about earlier, that we know there's, sort of increasing need among college-age students for mental health support. So I think certainly first, and I think we've tried to do this, we'll certainly continue to look at it, is making sure that we actually have the right kinds of mental health support services on our campus. And you mentioned the BARC, the counseling center. I know you have resources within the athletics department. And it's important that people have that access and that we make that access really visible, that it's not something unusual. We talk about that just like we talk about going to the slick and working out, just like we talk about eating healthy, that it is just a normal part of taking care of yourself holistically. And then absolutely, I think, people sharing their own personal experiences and how what they've done to deal with their mental health has helped them, and particularly high profile people, I think it helps people feel more comfortable with what they're doing. So I appreciate the coaches and student athletes sharing some of their own personal experiences, because that means so much to people, and particularly people that have gone through it, that will really help reduce the stigma and encourage people to take advantage of those resources and support. So I appreciate what you're doing and the way you're talking about encouraging people to share their stories. I think that's really critical.
What other thoughts do you just have that maybe you'd want to share about mental health with college students, college student athletes?
All I would really want to add is just to really encourage our student athletes and our students. If you're feeling stressed, if you really feel like you're having some mental health issues, no matter how small they might seem, don't be afraid to tell somebody about it, whether that's somebody like Dr. Marsh-Bell, whether it's a coach, a trainer, a teacher. That's really kind of the most important thing, is being willing to say, I need help. And if you're willing to do that, then we can put the resources around to help deal with those issues. And the sooner you do that, when you're starting to feel that stress, the more likely it is you're going to be able to deal with them in an effective way and not wait too long where you really have some significant issues and problems. So I just really encourage people to be willing to tell somebody about their issues and concerns and to be willing to ask for help. I think it's critically important.
Among our student athletes, mental toughness is a big thing. And so sometimes I hear athletes say, in their attempts to be mentally tough and maintain mental toughness, if they're dealing with something, they don't feel like they can come talk to someone, or there's kind of this conflict between being mentally tough and being able to say, maybe experiencing some anxiety or symptoms of depression, or maybe just homesick. What are your thoughts about that, the fight sometimes that mental toughness and mental illness find themselves in?
No, you're absolutely right. But, I would say that probably one of the most courageous things you can do is to admit that you need help. It's scary to do that, but frankly, I think it shows a great deal of self-awareness. It shows a great deal of sort of not just care and concern for yourself, but for the people that you're around. Because if you're not mentally healthy on your team, you're not going to be able to do the best you can to contribute to what the team needs to accomplish. And so, I think, frankly, if you're talking about kind of resilience and toughness, being willing to admit you need help and that you have an issue or a problem shows a great deal of mental toughness in a way, because in some ways the easy thing to do is not tell somebody about it.
Yeah. I love that. When I talk to the athletes, I talk to them about the comparison between their physical health, because if they're injured, they're going directly to their athletic trainer, to the coach, and telling them that, and they can still be physically tough and resilient, have surgery if need to, do their rehab, stronger. And so to have that same mindset when talking about your mental health, that getting treatment is similar in the way that you do that, and sometimes come back stronger, more mentally tough. I don't know how to word that, but ready to handle things that you come up against.
No, that's absolutely true. And then frankly, you can be a great support and example to your teammates, because very likely if you're going through something like that, you've got teammates that are as well, and you can be a great resource for them and support when they see another teammate being willing to ask for that help that they need.
What do you think, or what have you seen as you've talked to student athletes and just students in general, that they are struggling with the most, either pre where we are right now or currently? Kind of what have you heard about what's been maybe some of the stresses that they're experiencing?
Yeah, I think what we've done quite a bit of surveying of our students during this time to try to understand what their stresses are. And so I think what we're hearing a lot of is that they're feeling very isolated. They're used to being on a campus where we spend a lot of time engaging them together and talking about community and connectedness. And then when they're physically apart, that isolation, I think, has been particularly challenging for them. And then, many of them are home. They may have families that members have lost their jobs. So there's these financial stresses that add to that. Some of them are at home with younger brothers and sisters, and they may have to be doing more childcare, helping with homeschooling. And so I think it's just the added complexity of their lives right now, along with the physical isolation from people that used to be around them to help support them, that's causing a lot of stress. And we see a great desire on the part of our students to be back on campus together with one another. And so I do think that sense of community and belonging is really important to people's mental health and well-being. And so we certainly want to do everything we can to get people back here and help support them in that. So those are some of the things that we're seeing right now as we work with students, and certainly trying, as I know you are, kind of in remote ways to provide the support we need to help them deal with the stresses that are frankly kind of different than they would be experiencing if they were on campus. We do know, even on campus, that especially for freshmen, that sense of isolation and aloneness is one of the biggest risks of freshmen and their retention on a college campus. So when you're physically not together, that can even be magnified and be a more challenging situation than even if you were physically on a campus.
Yeah. I've been at Baylor, it'll be 9 years in the fall, and it's interesting how every year there's kind of this flow of what happens. I spend a lot of time in August with homesickness and being in college, and then about midway through the semester, there's a little more stress about school, and at the end of the semester, finals hit, and there's that real stress about school, and then the questioning about what it might be like to return home after their first semester, and then it's kind of all over again in the spring. So it's going to be interesting to see how that stays the same or changes this year after everything, all the changes that we're going to go through and continue to go through.
Yeah, I expect we'll have to adapt some more. I mean, we certainly adapted a lot this spring, but I think people will come back and different things may be important, different things may be challenging and stressful. And frankly, what we are doing on campus this fall will be different than what we've done in the past. It will not be normal life at Baylor. It will be kind of a new normal, at least for a while. And so we're all going to continue to have to be flexible and adaptable as we do that. And that in and of itself can cause a lot of stress for people. So I do think you're right. We're going to kind of have to learn as we go about how we need to provide ongoing support and care for our campus community.
Well, Thank you so much, Dr. Livingstone, for taking time to talk with us about mental health and to raise more awareness as we are continuing to walk through May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. We appreciate the support that you provide to our students and our staff and the areas on campus that are really trying to provide mental health services to our students. So thank you so much for your time.
Happy to be with you, Dr. Marsh-Bell. Appreciate all the work you do to support our students and student athletes. And as you know, I support what you're doing. Anything I can do to help, just let me know.
All right. Well, you enjoy the Brazzers.
I will.